AI coding is changing the way software is created, and there's one team and one lone 20x engineer leading the way for you and I. Cursor is the team. The Cursor team has made significant strides in AI coding, but there's one feature they've developed that stands far above the rest. Everything else pales in comparison. In this video, I'll show you what this feature is and why it's so important. This feature is so new, it doesn't have any real true documentation yet, but if you visit the changelog, you can see exactly what this feature is. This is none other than Cursor's brand new composer feature. The main trick here is that it is the new experimental multi-file editing feature. Let's dive into it. So in order to enable Cursor's composer feature, you can go into your settings, go to the beta flags, make sure that composer is enabled here. Once you've done that, Command I will pop up a small composer window and Command Shift I will pop up a full screen version. Let's go ahead and write a change and let's convert this input and this output variable here you can see in this component. Let's go ahead and give this a true input field and a true output field. Let's open up Cursor's composer. Let's go ahead and try out the brand new ChatGPT 4 latest model. I'll prompt convert input into a real input field. Make the input dark blue and white text. I'll hit enter and you can see it's focusing one file at a time. Right now we only have liquid prompt.view in our context, and there you can see the changes getting written. I'll go ahead, accept these changes. You can see here we have input ping how are you. It updated this to an input field and now we have a label. Let's go ahead and make a similar update to our output field, with the difference being we want to take this output field and convert it into a markdown component that we're using in another component somewhere else. So what I'll do is I'll hit Command N to start a new chat, add another file to the context. So the change I'm looking for is also in this prompt editor. All I'll do is reference it and then I'll say convert output to a MDC component and render the prompt output there. Cool, so it picked up on this component here. I'll go ahead and hit accept all so we can take a look at these changes. And now we're rendering this in this MDC component. This is great. Let's go ahead and test out some of the multi-file editing features that this gives us, right? Because that's the whole point. We can already do this using Cursor. You know, we could have made all those changes using the end-line selection prompt. The benefit and the value of this brand new composer editor is that we can write to multiple files. So what I'll say here is move the input field into its own liquid input, and I'll specify that directory as well. Component, same with the output field. You can see here, we're actually going to generate that component. We have the liquid input, liquid output, and these files have now been created and now they're getting referenced, right? So I'll go ahead, accept all. So now we have this error here. I'm not gonna do anything manually. I'm just gonna highlight this. I'm gonna come back over to Composer. I'm gonna paste this in, resolve this error, and then I'll go ahead and just add those new files, right? So I'll add input, I'll add output, and let it rip. So I'm still testing out the capabilities of ChatGPT 4o. From what I can tell, it seems like a very capable model, but it's not as consistent and it's not as solid as a model like Sonnet 3.5. So it's gonna break this model into both a value and an input. That looks great, I'll accept that. And let's go ahead and refresh. And that looks great. Looks like we have our rendering back up and running there. So there's an example of using Cursor's composer feature to write multiple components at the exact same time, right? So this is pretty cool to see. Let's go ahead and push this further. I want to go ahead and improve the styling of both these components. So I'm going to use Cursor Composer's overlay feature for this. So I'm going to use Command Shift I here. So you can see we have this new composer button. I'm going to go ahead and click that and start adding the context needed to make these changes. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to add the liquid prompt, input, and output. And now we have those files in our context. So now I can go ahead and just prompt whatever I'm looking for to make the changes, and we can keep testing ChatGPT 4.0 latest on top of Composer. I'm gonna go ahead and add one more file here. There's a reference file that I used before that I wanna go ahead and just kind of get some of the styles from. So I'm gonna go ahead and add prompt editor as well. This is an existing code base. Let me just go ahead and show you the size here. If I come in here and look for regex, I had this before. So yeah, if we look at total, so this code base has about 22,000 lines of code. And if we do, what was it, grep-c, we can see that we have about 151 files, specifically .ts and .vue files. So, you know, this is a full stack code base. It's a Nux application. This is in production. This is live code with multi-file editing. With these AI coding tools, we're operating on about 151 across TypeScript and Vue.js, and then about 22,000 lines of code. So this is a small production code base. There are code bases I'm sure you've seen and worked with that are much larger, especially if you're mid or senior level. 150 files. This is fairly sizable, and you know, of course, it'll continue to grow in size as the product grows. But let's go ahead and hop back to our Composer menu here. Looks like we lost the file references, so I'm just going to add those back here. We had the input, output, and the prompt editor. And what we're going to do here is say style the liquid input and liquid output to mirror the prompt editor. I'll just go ahead and leave that as it is, right? So we're asking the assistant to look at these 4 files, pull these styles from the prompt editor, and apply them to our liquid input and our liquid output. So this is really cool. You can see, let me just go ahead and open this up a little bit. So this is really cool, right? So on the right panel here, you can see it walking through the changes, giving an explanation. And once we click the file, it's going to show off the changes needed for each respective file, right? So this is really cool to see. It's really breaking it down and showing the exact changes it's making across multiple files. I'll go ahead here, I'll hit accept all, and you can see here we have some styling. So not the best styling. It looks like, you know, it's not exactly what we were looking for, but it's close enough. Remove the background from the input section and delete input : delete the label, right? So just making a couple more tweaks here, not exactly the way I want it. So I'm just going to keep tweaking to get the results I'm looking for. So you can see there in that iteration, it only updated liquid input. I'll just hit accept all. And you can see in the UI, it dropped that. And it looks like it did drop the background on the button as well. Put the background back on the input HTML element. Okay, so again, I'll accept, and there we go. So we got the background back, that looks good. Now I want to center these items. It's kind of like clunky right there. So, and if you want to close this, you just hit escape. So now you're back in your regular IDE editing mode, which is fantastic. We can go over to the liquid prompt. And now I want to give this something to reference by, right? Prompt editor. And then I'll just say, I'll start a new chat here just because we don't need all the context. I'll just go to the liquid prompt and I'll say, center the vertically and horizontally. All right, so I'll just go ahead, prompt that, let it get to work there, and looks like that's good. I'll go ahead and hit accept, and now you can see that there, it's going left to right. So of course the fix for this is flex call. So I'll just literally say flex call, let it make that change with the context of the previous conversation, hit accept, and now we have this, right? So, you know, this is just like classic styling, classic CSS writing. Make the width of the liquid input the same, match the input field. I'm just doing this as a test. I actually don't know if this will work. What I'm hoping will happen here is that it automatically adds the files, the content inside liquid input and output to the context and makes this change. So let's go ahead and just see if it does that. This is actually a test. I'm not sure if this will work. Let's go ahead and try. Okay, yeah, so that's not working, right? It is only looking at the files that it has in its context, and it just does that to the top level. So that's fine. What I'll do here is I'll hit reject all, and then I'll add these files to the context, right? So this is really cool. After execution, I can just go ahead and add these, and then I'll look for my previous message here. I'll just throw this in here, right? So now I'm gonna paste this message in again and see how it does with the context of the files. So you can see now we're editing the input and the output, and we also are editing the liquid prompt, which I'm not sure if we need to do that. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Input output width, and we're setting that to max with 500 pixels. Okay, so that looks fine. I'll go ahead and just accept this, and now we should get some matching width roughly, okay? So whatever, that looks fine. I'll just do one more. I'll say gap, or okay, gap 9, I guess. I'm just doing adding a gap here to these items, and we'll just accept, and there we go, right? So great, so now we have that. Okay, so that's good. We're making a couple changes, right? This is just small, front end stuff, but it's really nice because what we're doing here is we're kind of moving ourselves up the stack. We're not writing the stuff manually by hand anymore. We're asking for what we want done at a higher level, and then we're letting the LLM, we're letting our models, our AI-powered IDE cursor, we're letting this stuff do the hard work for us, right? Now we need to, when we press the enter key, I want whatever prompt is in here to actually execute. We're gonna keep these files context here on enter key when liquid prompt, run a new prompt up to liquid prompt.view and run the make prompt function. So long story short here is in the liquid prompt file, we have this make prompt function here that is coming out of a hook. And all this does is, it runs prompt and it returns the result, right? It sets it to the prompt output right here. We want, when we press the enter key on the input field, instead of doing this in our mounted hook, we want these components to just handle that for us. So what we'll do is open this up again and we'll just let that fire. So let's see how GPT-4o and Composer does this for us here. Okay, so it knows to update the input field here. This is awesome. It has that enter key event set up, and now it's writing that higher level method on the liquid prompt. So this all looks good. So I'll just hit accept all. I'll say remove handle enter from onMounted. So I'm just saying, don't fire that event off on the onMounted hook. We'll just do that from our emitted event. So, okay, that looks good. I'll accept, close this. And now we see this looking good. Ping, how are you? I'll hit enter. There it is. So now it is, giving us that content. I don't know what model we're using right here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just, write a quick prompt to create an input field for that. So I'll say, I'll do this in a small, quick Composer window here. So I'll just come in here, I'll hit Command New, and I'll just say, move the model into a ref, show it above the liquid input field. Cool, so I'll accept that and close this. Let's go ahead and see what the model is good. So we have GPT-4 Mini running here, and it's just going to show that right at the top. That's fine. Let's go ahead and just take a look at what that looks like again. Okay, that's whatever, looks good. And now if I hit enter here, we're going to get the results out there and type another prompt. I'll say count to 5. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very cool. Count to 10. And I'll say in reverse. And I'll say skip evens. So you can tell this is a real LLM running under the hood, right? Skip 3, good, skip 9. Nice. Okay, so you can tell, right, this is a model running under the hood. That's great. So let's go ahead and do a couple more things here. I don't like this blue color, and the idea behind the liquid prompt editor here is that I want to show and hide this prompt editor no matter where I am. We'll of course use Composer for this. So I'm going to switch to the liquid input file and start a new message here. And the nice part about this is whatever file you have focused, it's going to automatically start the context with just that file. There's the background color. Obviously we can tweak that, update the background color and dark blue, left to right. Or no, I'll say to top right. So we'll see these changes come in here. Perfect. And there's that gradient. And okay, so we'll allow that for now. And then I'm going to come back in here, just making some small tweaks, just kind of moving fast, doing whatever. Convert the model div to AP, and it should come in and just highlight this one line here. Great. I'll accept that. Cool. Nice. So now it has our font there. That's awesome. And now we'll ask for our keyboard event. So what I'll say here is using view use / on keystroke, I think it is, show and hide the liquid prompt editor div. And I'll say add a ref for the show hide var. Okay, so I'll just let that rip. This is just a single file edit. Let's go ahead and see if it can do this. I did forget to mention the exact key binding that I wanted, so we'll add that up in a follow-up prompt. But you can see here we did get this solid import. We got the variable we wanted, and we have the keystroke, which is good. So that's pretty close. So I'll go ahead and accept this. And then I'll go ahead and, what do we get here? Let's go ahead and refresh. Oh, so we have this bug here, right? So we have a full-on error. So I'll say fix error bad comment line 9. Okay, good. Just gonna go ahead and fix that for us. Awesome, looks good. Default show prompt editor to false on keystroke command plus P to show and hide that var. Keep escape as well. So it shouldn't need to touch any of the other files that we have here. Okay, nice, that looks good. I think this can accept a list, we'll see. So I'll go ahead and accept that. And now it's show default false. I'll hit command P. And of course we're getting the classic print. So I'll say, I believe the on keystroke, places the event here, right? So event, and then we have the keyboard event, and then we have to, do that manually. So I'll just use cursor tab here to do these auto completions. Another incredible feature from the cursor team. But so let's go ahead and try this now, right? All right, so it looks like these key combinations aren't working with on keystroke. They're just not supported like this. It only handles the individual button presses. That's fine. What I'll do here is I'll come in and I'll just add show and hide this, right? It's actually faster. So that's good. Now we're showing and hiding that. Now we have this small, super simple prompt editor that we can, ideally we can, convert portion into its own component and then just kind of place wherever we want to, right? So let's move this content and the relevant scripting into its own component. So just like we did for liquid input and output, let's go ahead and just move, all this content here into its own component. I'm going to use the larger editor for this and start a new composer. And all I'll do is load the liquid prompt, move the, and what do we call this? Liquid prompt editor. Move the liquid prompt editor and all related state into its own component. And we'll say, call it liquid prompt editor.view. Okay, so now we're going to ask for all of it to be moved into its own component. It's going to do all the importing it needs, and then it's going to also update the top level liquid prompt just as before. It looks like it is going to miss the on keystroke event, so I'll say don't forget to move the on keystroke into the component, and I'll send that as a follow-up. Perfect. And then all we're left with here in the previous component is just the top level items that we had before, a couple unused variables, a couple hooks, whatever. So I'll go ahead, accept all changes. You can see we have the first change here. This is the brand new liquid prompt editor file. It created this entire file for us. And then we have the previous liquid prompt.view file, which just has, a couple additional components and the editor itself. So I'll accept. Okay, so it looks like we have an error. That's totally fine. Again, I'm just going to copy all this. We have an unknown keywords. Open up Composer again. I'm going to start a new window. I'm going to add our new file here, and I'll say resolve this issue. Okay, so it's just got this unnecessary variable here. I'll just say just remove unsub. Okay, so that looks good. Let's make sure liquid prompt changes are also looking good. We don't need this composable here at all. Drop the use prompt editor import. Next part about Nux, this is automatically imported for us, so just going to ask it to drop that for us. No need for that. Okay, now it's trying to delete other code, so it thinks I wanted to remove all of it. It's kind of being too smart in a way. So this could be easily solved with a system prompt where I say, hey, we're using Nuxt. In Nuxt, we automatically have all of our hooks and our components imported. We also don't need any view imports. You can do that through the system prompt message in the cursor settings. I'm just going to ask it to undo these changes. So undo, just don't import, keep the handle enter functionality the same. Okay, so this is fine. I'm gonna hit accept all, and then I'm just gonna drop this change back in so that it has that. And let's go ahead and make sure it all still works. Great. So this is pretty cool, right? So a couple bumps, a couple hiccups. I personally am still trying to figure out exactly where the capabilities of Composer are, but also, every model that you use here operates differently. If you're using Aider or Continue or any other type of AI coding tool, you really have to see and kind of play with how the model performs. Every model performs different with every different tool. Remember that the engineers, the people building out these tools, they are writing prompts, and every prompt has a different impact, and every prompt has a different impact with different models. ChatGPT 4.0 is super new, it's super bleeding edge. I'm going to say, keep using Claude 3.5 Sonnet for coding. With some of these models, you can't really just look at the benchmarks and know how it will perform. I can tell you, and I've been saying this for a while, and if you're actually writing code with AI, you know this as well. Claude 3.5 Sonnet is the king of AI coding, and it integrates the best with coding tools. Just trying out GPT 4.0 here, I can tell you that Sonnet wouldn't have made some of the mistakes that ChatGPT 4.0 made, and that has nothing to do with the Composer feature from the Cursor team. So this is really cool, right? With this brand new Composer feature, we now have multi-file editing inside of the Cursor IDE. With it, we were able to fairly quickly build out a simple prompt editing tool. If you want the insane productivity gains that are available to you, you need to be using the incredible AI coding tools that unlock these capabilities for you, right? So we're talking about Cursor and we're talking about Aider. These are the two AI coding tools leading the way. Writing code is cheaper and faster than ever. I am just getting started using this Composer feature. I discovered it this past week and have been really digging in. Honestly, before this feature, I was moving more and more away from Cursor. Multi-file editing is a massive killer feature for AI coding. It allows you to write code like you actually do, which is across 5, 10, sometimes 20 files at the same time. So this is really powerful, especially for the mid-senior level engineers that are making changes across large code bases. This is a smaller code base, only 150 files, but this is a tool that you can use on real production code bases. Cursor's new Composer feature really allows you to unlock multi-file editing, which is, like I mentioned, a massive must for writing code on production code bases. As large language models improve and we get Claude 3.5 Opus, we get GPT Next, we get Strawberry, we get Gemini 1.5 Ultra, you'll be able to lean more and more into these multi-file editing capabilities. Big shout out to the Cursor team. You guys are doing great work. And at the beginning, I mentioned the lone 20x engineer. That is none other than Paul, working on Aider. I recommend both these tools for AI coding. Since the beginning, these two tools have been my favorite. Paul is building Aider and the Cursor team is building Cursor, of course. These are my recommendations for AI coding. As many AI coding tools as I've tried, I keep coming back to these two and I keep sharing these two on the channel for a good reason. They're the best two tools you can use to multiply your output as an engineer. These tools are also really important and powerful because they're focusing on the experience of the engineer. They're focusing on what it's actually like to be in a code base with hundreds and thousands of files with hundreds of thousands of lines of code. Both Aider and Cursor are the products that understand that, and they're building out the experience for us engineers. Big shout out to both of them. I'm going to be covering both these tools more on the channel as I have for the past year or so. I'll link a couple of the previous videos if you're super amped on AI coding. Those will be in the description for you. You can check those out. I hope this demo of Cursor's new Composer feature was helpful for you. If it was, you know what to do. Drop the like, drop the sub, leave a comment. Let me know how your AI coding is going. Let me know how much you're using these tools. Big thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.